The mountain man married the fat black woman in town as a bet, slamming his whiskey glass down as cruel laughter echoed through the saloon and sealing both their fates with drunken words. The townsfolk see him as nothing more than a wild curiosity, useful for amusement, but hardly worth genuine respect. They've already written his story, a lonely hermit, destined to die forgotten in the mountains. But across town stands the woman they mock daily, dismissed, yet possessing a razor-sharp mind for business and a secret that could change everything. She owns half the properties these same people rent, accumulated through years of silent investments while enduring their scorn. When gossip of the humiliating wager reaches her ears, she sees an opportunity neither of them expected. Two outcasts now face a choice that will expose truths about wealth, dignity, and what happens when society's assumptions crumble. Will she demand the respect she's earned, or accept the role they've forced upon her? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The mountain wind cut through Ethan Coulter's worn coat as he counted his last silver dollars. 3 months behind on his land payments. The bank notice crumpled in his weathered hands, threatened foreclosure by spring. 20 years of trapping and hunting, and he'd lose everything to a piece of paper. Snow crunched under his boots as he descended toward Millbrook. The monthly supply run felt heavier this time. Each step toward civilization reminded him how little he belonged there. The townspeople tolerated his presence for the pelts he traded, nothing more. Murphy's saloon buzzed with its usual crowd. Ethan pushed through the door, seeking warmth and whiskey to dull the ache of impending loss. Conversations paused as heads turned. The mountain man had arrived for his monthly spectacle. Tom Walker's voice carried over the noise. That colored woman at the general store thinks she's something special, walking around like she owns the place. Snickers erupted from his circle of followers. Ethan ordered his drink and tried to ignore them. Big as a barn and twice as stubborn, Tom continued. No man would ever look at that twice. The whiskey burned Ethan's throat. He'd seen Delilah Brown countless times during supply runs. She ran her store with quiet efficiency, never causing trouble for anyone. These men had nothing better to do than mock a hard-working woman. I'd pay good money to see someone try to court her. Tom's voice grew louder. Probably crush a man just trying to dance. Ethan's jaw tightened. The alcohol mixed with his frustration over the land debt. These soft town dwellers thought they could judge everyone else while contributing nothing of value themselves. Decent? Ethan stepped closer. There's nothing decent about mocking a woman trying to make an honest living. The saloon grew quiet. Tom sensed weakness and pressed forward. Tell you what, Coulter. If you think we're so wrong, why don't you prove it? Court the woman yourself. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Ethan felt the walls closing in. His land, his home, everything slipping away while these men treated him like a dancing bear. Maybe I will. Tom's grin widened. Put your money where your mouth is. I bet you couldn't get her to marry you before spring thaw. The words hung in the air. Ethan's vision blurred from whiskey and rage. 20 years of isolation, 20 years of being treated like an animal, and now they wanted him to prove his worth through someone else's humiliation. You're on. The crowd erupted. Hands slapped backs as money changed hands. Tom Walker had orchestrated another evening's entertainment at the expense of two people who'd never asked for his attention. Ethan stumbled from the saloon into the frozen night. His breath formed clouds in the bitter air as reality crashed down. What had he done? A woman's dignity sacrificed for his wounded pride. Morning brought clarity and shame. Sunlight streaming through his cabin window illuminated the magnitude of his mistake. The entire town would be buzzing with news of the ridiculous wager. Delilah Brown would face increased scrutiny and mockery because of his drunken outburst. He saddled his horse and rode to town. The general store sat at Millbrook's heart, its windows displaying goods that kept the community supplied. Delilah had built something meaningful, while he'd hidden in the mountains, feeling sorry for himself. The bell chimed as he entered. Delilah looked up from her ledger, her dark eyes steady and intelligent. She wore a simple dress that spoke of practicality rather than fashion. Her size was noticeable, but so was the quiet strength in her posture. "Mr. Coulter, your usual supplies?" "No, ma'am. I came to apologize." She set down her pen. "For what exactly?" Heat crept up his neck. "Last night, the saloon. I said things that weren't my place to say." "I see." Her voice remained level. "And what exactly did you say?" The story tumbled out. The bet, the money, the promise to marry her before spring. Each word felt like another weight added to his shoulders. Delilah listened without interruption, her expression unreadable. When he finished, silence stretched between them. She walked to the window and gazed at the street where people moved about their daily business. "They think this is amusing," she said finally. "Yes, ma'am. I'm truly sorry." She turned back to face him. "Mr. Coulter, how much do you know about my business?" The question caught him off guard. Boastful. "I also know you owe the bank $800 on your mountain property." Ethan's mouth went dry. Public records, he realized. Anyone could access them. "Here's what I propose," Delilah continued. "You court me properly for 2 months. Real courtship, not mockery. In return, I'll settle your debt with the bank." "Ma'am, I couldn't ask you to do that." "You're not asking. I'm offering." She moved closer. "I've never been courted, Mr. Coulter. Never had a man bring me flowers or take me for walks or treat me like I'm worth pursuing. If I'm going to be the subject of their entertainment anyway, I might as well get something I've always wanted." The proposal stunned him. This woman had turned his shameful mistake into an opportunity for dignity. "What if real feelings develop?" he asked. A small smile touched her lips. "Then I suppose we'll deal with that when it happens." Ethan shook Delilah's hand to seal their agreement. Her grip was firm and confident. The arrangement felt surreal, but her practical approach impressed him. She'd transformed his drunken mistake into something dignified. "I'll return tomorrow evening," he said, "if that suits you. 6 o'clock. I close the store then." The next day crawled by at his cabin. Ethan cleaned himself properly for the first time in weeks. He rode to town carrying wildflowers he'd found near the creek. The gesture felt awkward, but Delilah had requested genuine courtship. She accepted the flowers with quiet grace. They walked through Millbrook's main street as curious eyes followed their movement. Whispers trailed behind them like smoke. "They're enjoying the show," Delilah observed. "Does that bother you?" "I've been their entertainment for years. At least now I'm getting something in return." Her matter-of-fact attitude struck him. She possessed a strength he hadn't expected. Most people crumbled under constant scrutiny, but Delilah had learned to use it. Their first week established a routine. Evening walks, conversations on her store's front porch, shared meals at the boarding house dining room. Ethan discovered her quick wit and sharp mind. She asked intelligent questions about mountain life and wilderness survival. "You mentioned the church lot," he said during their third dinner together. "How did you acquire that?" "The previous owner needed cash quickly. I offered fair market value when the bank wouldn't extend his loan." She cut her roast beef with precise movements. People assume I'm not paying attention to business opportunities. They discuss deals right in front of me like I'm furniture. That's their mistake. Yes, it is. Ethan learned more about her background through casual conversation. Her parents had died when she was 12. A missionary family took her in and provided education. She'd learned bookkeeping and business principles from traveling merchants who stopped at various trading posts during their second week. Bought this store when old Henrik decided to move back east. Been building from there. Her strategic mind fascinated him. While others saw only her appearance, she'd quietly constructed a business empire. The boarding house generated steady rental income. The church lot would triple in value once construction finished. "You're brilliant," he said one evening. "I'm practical. There's a difference." But Ethan recognized genius when he saw it. His years of solitary observation had taught him to read people accurately. Delilah possessed something rare, a mind that could see patterns others missed. The town's amusement gradually shifted to curiosity. Their courtship appeared genuine, not the mockery everyone expected. Tom Walker's jokes fell flat as the couple's obvious compatibility became apparent. Grace Sullivan, the school teacher and Delilah's only real friend, offered encouragement during their evening visits. She was a small woman with kind eyes, who treated Delilah with genuine respect. "I've never seen you this happy," Grace told Delilah while Ethan waited outside. "It's strange," Delilah admitted. "I expected to feel used. Instead, I feel seen." Ethan found himself looking forward to their time together. Her intelligence challenged him in ways he hadn't experienced since his army days. She understood strategy and planning, while he knew survival and adaptation. Their skills complemented each other naturally. "Would you like to see my cabin?" he asked during their third week. "Very much." The mountain ride took 2 hours. Delilah sat her horse well, adapting to the terrain better than most townspeople. When they reached his property, she studied everything with keen interest. The cabin was small but well built. His workshop held tools for trap maintenance and hide preparation. A root cellar stored preserved food for winter months. Everything had its place and purpose. "This is efficient," she said, examining his organization system. "But you could improve the workflow." She pointed out several modifications that would save time and effort. Her suggestions were practical and immediately useful. Within an hour, she'd identified improvements that would have taken him months to discover. "You see patterns everywhere," he observed. "It's how I survive." They shared a simple meal he'd prepared. The afternoon passed quickly as she asked detailed questions about trapping routes, seasonal changes, and wildlife behavior. Her curiosity was genuine, not polite interest. "Most people think this life is primitive," Ethan said. "Most people can't see past their assumptions." As evening approached, wind patterns. His years in the mountains had taught him to respect nature's warnings. "No, we'll have to wait it out here." The first snowflakes began falling as they secured his horse in the small stable. Within minutes, the gentle flakes became a driving blizzard. Wind howled around the cabin as snow piled against the windows. "I've never been in a real mountain storm," Delilah said, watching the white wall outside. "They can last days. Good thing I keep supplies." As night fell, they found themselves truly alone together for the first time. The arrangement that had begun as mutual necessity was about to become something neither had anticipated. The storm would test more than their ability to survive the elements. I should mention, Delilah said quietly, I've never spent the night alone with a man before. You're safe here, Ethan replied. I give you my word. Outside, the blizzard raged with increasing fury. Inside, two people who'd started as strangers began to discover what lay beneath the surface of their careful arrangement. The blizzard trapped them for 3 days. Snow piled against the cabin windows until only dim light filtered through. Ethan maintained the fire, while Delilah organized his supplies with systematic efficiency. Your food storage needs better rotation, she said, examining his preserved goods. You're wasting resources. She reorganized his entire pantry, using principles she'd learned managing store inventory. Items were grouped by expiration dates and frequency of use. The simple changes would extend his supplies significantly. Ethan watched her work with growing admiration. She approached every task like a puzzle to be solved. Her mind automatically sought the most efficient solution. Where did you learn to think like this? He asked. Necessity. When you're different, you have to be twice as good at everything. The second day brought deeper conversations. Trapped together with nowhere to retreat, their careful politeness dissolved. Real stories emerged between the mundane tasks of survival. Delilah told him about the trading post where she'd lived with the missionary family. Merchants from across the territory stopped there regularly. She'd absorbed their knowledge about supply chains, market pricing, and customer behavior. I was 12 when I realized something important, she said, while mending a tear in his spare shirt. People underestimate quiet observers. They reveal more than they intend. That's how you built your business? Information is more valuable than money. I listened to every conversation, remembered every detail. When opportunities appeared, I was ready. Ethan shared his own story during the storm's second night. The war had broken something inside him. Too many friends lost. Too much violence witnessed. The mountains offered peace and solitude. Never started trusting them, Delilah replied. But I learned to use their predictable behavior. On the third day, the storm finally exhausted itself. Sunlight streamed through ice-covered windows as wind died to whispers. They emerged from the cabin to find a transformed landscape. Snow reached nearly to Ethan's chest in most places. We'll be here another day while I dig out, he said. Good. I want to see your trap lines. Despite the deep snow, Delilah insisted on following his routes. She struggled through drifts, but refused his offers to turn back. Her determination impressed him. Most people would have waited comfortably in the cabin. At each trap location, she asked detailed questions about placement and timing. Her analytical mind dissected his methods with surgical precision. You're checking these randomly, she observed after visiting 6 traps. There's no systematic pattern. I check them all eventually, but inefficiently. You're walking twice the distance necessary. She sketched a map in the snow showing optimal routes based on terrain and trap productivity. Her system would cut his daily travel time by nearly half. This is brilliant, Ethan said, studying her diagram. It's basic logistics, same principles that manage supply deliveries. That evening they prepared for their return to town. The forced intimacy of the storm had changed something between them. Polite courtship had evolved into genuine partnership. I need to tell you something, Delilah said as they packed supplies. Ethan waited, sensing importance in her tone. I've enjoyed these days more than any time I can remember. Her voice was steady but softer than usual. Whatever this arrangement was supposed to be, it's become something else. For me too. The admission hung between them like morning mist. Neither had planned on real feelings developing, but isolation had stripped away pretense. They'd seen each other's authentic selves and found unexpected compatibility. "What happens when we return?" she asked. "We continue. If you want to." "I do." The ride back to Millbrook took most of the next day. Deep snow slowed their progress, but Delilah never complained. She'd adapted to mountain life faster than anyone Ethan had known. Town buzzed with concern over their absence. Grace Sullivan had organized search parties, but the storm made rescue attempts impossible. Their safe return brought relief and increased speculation about their relationship. "People are talking," Grace told Delilah privately. "They say you two seem different now." "We are different." "Good different?" "Yes." Tom Walker's reaction was less positive. His joke was becoming something real, and that threatened his position as social orchestrator. He began making darker comments about the arrangement. "Mountain Man's getting quite an education," he told his followers at Murphy's. "Wonder what she's really after." Noticed the couple's obvious compatibility. Their partnership looked genuine, not performative. Ethan resumed his evening visits to Delilah. Their conversations now carried deeper intimacy, born from shared vulnerability. The storm had accelerated a relationship that might have taken months to develop naturally. "I've been thinking about your trapline suggestions," he said during one visit. "And I want to implement them, but I'd like your help with the planning." Her smile was radiant. "I'd enjoy that." They began meeting twice weekly instead of their original schedule. Business discussions blended with personal conversations. Delilah's analytical mind complemented Ethan's practical experience perfectly. The 2-month courtship period was nearing its end, but neither wanted their arrangement to conclude. What had begun as mutual necessity had become something neither expected. "The bank payment is due next week," Delilah mentioned casually. "I remember. Are you ready to make this arrangement permanent?" Ethan looked into her intelligent dark eyes and saw his future. Not the lonely isolation he'd planned, but partnership with someone who understood and appreciated his strengths while contributing her own unique talents. "Yes, if you'll have me." "I will." The decision felt as natural as breathing. Two people who'd started as reluctant participants in someone else's cruel joke had discovered they were perfectly matched partners in the most important endeavor of their lives. Delilah paid Ethan's land debt the following Monday. She walked into the bank with $800 in cash and settled his account without ceremony. The transaction took 5 minutes, but its implications rippled through Millbrook immediately. Word spread quickly in small towns. By afternoon, everyone knew about the payment. Some viewed it as generous support between courting partners. Others whispered darker theories about hidden motivations. Tom Walker seized on the gossip with renewed energy. His original joke was transforming into something that diminished his social influence. He needed to regain control of the narrative. "Mighty convenient arrangement they have," he told his drinking companions. "Wonder what other business dealings they're conducting." His insinuations grew bolder each day. The suggestion that their relationship was purely financial began circulating through certain circles. Tom painted himself as someone who'd uncovered the truth behind their deception. Ethan heard the whispers during his next supply run. Store customers fell silent when he entered, then resumed muted conversations after he passed. The change in atmosphere was unmistakable. "People are talking," he told Delilah that evening. "Let them talk. They've been talking about me for years. This is different. They're questioning our arrangement." Delilah set down her sewing with deliberate precision. "Our arrangement is exactly what we say it is." Two people who discovered they're compatible. Her calm response impressed him. She'd faced social scrutiny her entire adult life and developed immunity to gossip. But Ethan worried about increased hostility affecting her daily business. Grace Sullivan provided updates on shifting town sentiment during her regular visits. Some residents had grown uncomfortable watching the relationship succeed. It challenged their assumptions about social boundaries. "Mrs. Henderson refuses to shop at your store now," Grace reported. "Says it's not proper for a woman to have so much independence." "Mrs. Henderson still owes me $12 on her account," Delilah replied. "Her principals are flexible when she needs credit." Despite her confident exterior, the pressure was mounting. Several customers had reduced their purchases or switched to competing merchants. The financial impact remained small, but the social isolation was increasing. Ethan noticed the changes during their public appearances. Conversations stopped more abruptly when they approached. Invitations to social gatherings dried up completely. Even neutral acquaintances seemed uncomfortable around them. "Maybe we should spend more time at the cabin," he suggested. "Running away solves nothing. This is my home, too." Her stubborn determination both worried and impressed him. Delilah refused to be driven from the community she'd helped build. But Tom Walker's campaign was gaining momentum among those predisposed to disapprove. The situation escalated during the third week of February. Tom had been asking questions around town, visiting the bank and courthouse with increasing frequency. His behavior suggested he was gathering information for some larger purpose. "He's planning something," Grace warned Delilah. "My boarding house neighbors see him meeting with different groups every evening." "What kind of something?" "I don't know. But he's been asking about your property holdings and business arrangements." Ethan found Tom's activities more concerning than Delilah did. His military experience had taught him to recognize the signs of coordinated opposition. Tom wasn't just spreading gossip anymore. He was building a case for public presentation. "We need to be prepared," Ethan told Delilah. "For what?" "Whatever he's planning to reveal." The church social was scheduled for the last Saturday in February. The entire community would attend, making it perfect for any public announcements Tom might have planned. Delilah insisted they attend as usual, refusing to hide from whatever confrontation awaited. "If he wants to make a spectacle, let him," she said. "I'm not ashamed of anything we've done." The days leading up to the social felt charged with anticipation. Tom's supporters dropped hints about upcoming revelations. His opposition prepared for some dramatic exposure of the couple's supposed deceptions. Ethan spent those days reviewing their entire relationship from the outside perspective. Their arrangement could certainly appear calculating to those determined to think the worst. The financial transaction, the business discussions, the quick progression from strangers to partners. "Do you regret any of it?" he asked Delilah the night before the social. "No." "Do you?" "Not the relationship. Maybe the way it started. The way it started brought us together. I can't regret that." Saturday arrived gray and cold. The church social would be held in the community hall, with most of Millbrook's residents expected to attend. Ethan and Delilah prepared carefully, knowing they would face intense scrutiny. "Whatever happens tonight," Ethan said, as they walked toward the hall, "we face it together." "Together," Delilah agreed. The hall buzzed with conversation when they arrived. Groups of people clustered around tables laden with food and decorations. The atmosphere felt artificially festive, like a celebration masking underlying tension. Tom Walker stood near the center of the room, surrounded by his usual followers. He wore his best suit and carried himself with the confidence of someone holding important secrets. His eyes tracked Ethan and Delilah's movement through the crowd. Grace Sullivan approached them immediately. "He's been holding court all evening, building up to something big." "Any idea what?" "Papers. He's been showing people official-looking papers." Ethan's stomach tightened. Official papers could mean property records, bank documents, or other business information Tom had somehow obtained. The man's research had been more thorough than they'd realized. The evening progressed with forced normalcy until Tom called for everyone's attention. He moved to the front of the room with theatrical confidence, clearly relishing his moment in the spotlight. "Friends," he began, "we need to discuss something important about our community." Tom Walker held up the papers with practiced drama. The crowd fell silent, every eye focused on his presentation. He basked in the attention like a performer savoring applause. "I've been investigating the arrangement between our mountain man and the store owner," he announced. "What I discovered will shock you all." Murmurs rippled through the gathering. Some leaned forward eagerly, while others shifted uncomfortably. Grace Sullivan moved closer to Ethan and Delilah, positioning herself as visible support. "Miss Brown paid $800 to settle his land debt," Tom continued. "Public records don't lie. This so-called courtship is nothing but a business transaction." The revelation drew gasps from those who hadn't heard the rumors. Tom's supporters nodded knowingly, while others looked confused. The financial arrangement was hardly scandalous, but Tom presented triumphant exposure became something more personal and desperate. Tom's carefully planned revelation was taking an unintended turn. "You want to know the truth?" Tom's voice cracked slightly. "I've been in love with Delilah Brown for 3 years. 3 years of watching her every day and never having the courage to speak up." The admission stunned the crowd into absolute silence. Tom's face flushed red as the words poured out of him. His grand exposure had become an unwitting confession of his own cowardice. "I made that bet because I couldn't stand the thought of anyone else having what I was too afraid to pursue," he continued. "I've been trying to destroy their relationship because I can't bear my own failure." Ethan watched the man's public breakdown with a mixture of anger and pity. Tom's cruelty had stemmed from jealousy and self-hatred, not concern for community standards. The revelation recast everything in a different light. Delilah stepped forward, her posture straight and dignified. The crowd turned toward her, waiting for her response to Tom's confession. She surveyed the gathering with calm intelligence before speaking. "Mr. Walker is correct about the financial arrangement," she said clearly. "I did pay Mr. Coulter's debt, not as payment for services, but as an investment in someone I'd grown to respect." Her voice carried easily through the silent hall. Every word was chosen with precision, designed to educate rather than defend. What he doesn't understand is that genuine partnership requires mutual contribution. I offered financial support. Mr. Coulter offered knowledge, protection, and something I'd never experienced before: respectful courtship. She paused, letting her words settle over the crowd. Several people nodded slowly, beginning to understand the distinction she was making. "Our arrangement began with a cruel joke, yes, but it became something real because we chose to treat each other with dignity. That's not a business transaction. That's how relationships should work." Ethan moved beside her, presenting a united front to their community. The gesture was subtle but powerful. They faced judgment together, neither hiding behind the other. "Tom's confession explains much about his behavior," Ethan said, "but it doesn't excuse the pain he's caused. Delilah deserved better from someone who claims to care about her." The crowd began to murmur as Tom's motivations became clear. His moral outrage had been performance, masking personal jealousy. The community realized they'd been manipulated by someone pursuing a private grudge. Grace Sullivan stepped forward, adding her voice to the discussion. As the school teacher, Her opinion carried weight with most families in attendance. "I've watched this relationship develop," she announced. "What I've seen is two lonely people discovering they're perfectly compatible. Their happiness is genuine, regardless." Patterson, who ran the boarding house, mentioned seeing Ethan bring Delilah flowers regularly. Mr. Henderson admitted their business partnership seemed to benefit both parties equally. The tide of opinion was shifting away from Tom's accusations toward recognition of the couple's authentic connection. What had looked suspicious in isolation made sense within the broader context of their courtship. Tom stood alone at the front of the room, his grand revelation having backfired completely. His confession of cowardice had undermined his credibility as a moral authority. The papers in his hands seemed pathetic now rather than damning. "I apologize," Tom said quietly, "to both of you, and to this community for wasting your time with my personal problems." His supporters began drifting away, embarrassed by association with his public breakdown. The man who'd orchestrated the original bet now faced social isolation himself. Delilah surprised everyone with her response. Instead of accepting Tom's apology gracefully, she addressed his deeper confession directly. "Mr. Walker, if you'd approached me honestly 3 years ago, I would have given you fair consideration. But you chose mockery and manipulation instead. That tells me everything about your character." The words were delivered without cruelty, but their impact was devastating. Tom's face crumpled as he realized what his cowardice had cost him. Not just the woman he claimed to love, but the respect of his entire community. "I'll be leaving Millbrook," he said finally. "Fresh start somewhere else." "That's probably best," Delilah replied. The social resumed gradually as people processed what they'd witnessed. Conversations buzzed with new understanding of the relationship they'd been judging. The couple who'd been seen as suspicious now appeared admirably straightforward. Ethan and Delilah spent the rest of the evening receiving congratulations and well wishes. Their honesty about the arrangement's origins had won over most skeptics. The community was ready to accept their partnership on its own terms. As they walked home through the cold night, Delilah reflected on the evening's events. "Tom's confession changed everything," she observed. "It revealed his true motivations, made our honesty look even better by comparison. Do you think we'll face more opposition?" Ethan considered the question carefully. Tom had been the primary source of hostility toward their relationship. With him discredited and departing, most obstacles would disappear. "I think we've seen the worst of it," he replied. Spring arrived early that year. Snow melted from Millbrook's streets by the first week of March, revealing a town transformed by recent events. Tom Walker had departed quietly 3 days after his public confession, leaving behind a community forced to examine its own assumptions. Ethan and Delilah's wedding was scheduled for the 3rd Saturday of March. What had begun as a drunken bet had evolved into genuine celebration of partnership. The entire town planned to attend, a stark contrast to the mockery that had originally surrounded their arrangement. Grace Sullivan organized the ceremony with characteristic efficiency. The new church building wasn't finished, so they'd use the community hall where Tom's confession had changed everything. The location felt appropriate for a relationship that had overcome public scrutiny. "Are you nervous?" Grace asked Delilah while helping with wedding preparations. "No, this feels right." The certainty in her voice reflected months of careful consideration. Their compatibility had been tested through public opposition, private challenges, and genuine intimacy. Every trial had strengthened their partnership rather than weakening it. Ethan spent his final bachelor days finalizing improvements to the mountain cabin. Delilah's efficiency suggestions had transformed his simple shelter into a proper home. New shelving, reorganized storage, and improved workflow made the space suitable for 2 people. He also prepared a surprise for his bride, Using his woodworking skills and her business acumen, he'd crafted a detailed map of their combined properties. The visual representation showed how their individual assets created something larger together. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright. Millbrook bustled with preparation as residents gathered food and decorations for the celebration. The community had embraced the couple's story as proof that genuine love could emerge from unlikely circumstances. Tom Walker's unexpected return shocked everyone. He appeared at the church hall 2 hours before the ceremony, carrying a small wrapped package. His appearance was neat but humble, suggesting a man who'd undergone significant reflection. "I came to apologize properly," he told Ethan when they met outside the building, "and to give you both my blessing." The gesture was awkward but sincere. Tom's confession had exposed his motivations, but his departure had given him perspective on his behavior. He wanted to make genuine amends before starting his new life elsewhere. "I appreciate that," Ethan replied carefully. "I brought this for Delilah." Tom held out the package. "Something she mentioned wanting years ago, before I ruined everything with my stupidity." Inside was a leather-bound ledger with her initials embossed on the cover. The quality was exceptional, clearly expensive and carefully chosen. Tom had remembered a casual comment she'd made about needing better record-keeping books. "Tell her it's not meant to buy forgiveness," Tom said. "Just acknowledgement that she deserved better treatment from someone who claimed to care about her." The ceremony began at 2 o'clock. Reverend Matthews had arrived from the county seat to perform the service, bringing official recognition to their union. His presence elevated the occasion beyond simple frontier celebration. Delilah wore a dress Grace had helped her order from Denver. The deep blue fabric complemented her complexion, while the practical cut reflected her no-nonsense personality. She looked beautiful without trying to be someone she wasn't. Ethan had acquired his first proper suit for the occasion. The transformation from mountain hermit to respectable bridegroom was remarkable, but his essential character remained unchanged. He was still the man who'd defended her dignity in a saloon full of mockers. The vows they exchanged were traditional in form, but personal in content. They promised partnership rather than mere companionship, mutual respect rather than simple affection. Their words reflected the mature understanding they'd developed through months of genuine courtship. "Do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Reverend Matthews asked. "I do," Ethan replied, meaning every syllable. "Do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do," Delilah said with quiet conviction. The community erupted in applause as they kissed to seal their marriage. What had begun as entertainment for cruel observers had become inspiration for everyone present. Two people had created something beautiful from unpromising circumstances. The celebration continued into the evening. Tables groaned under donated food, while musicians provided entertainment. Children played games, while adults shared stories and laughter. The atmosphere was genuinely festive, not forced or artificial. During the dancing, several young couples approached the newlyweds for advice. Their successful partnership had become a model for others seeking authentic relationships. The example they'd set resonated throughout the community. "What's the secret?" asked Mary Stevens, who was being courted by the blacksmith's son. "Honesty," Delilah replied simply, "and willingness to see past surface appearances." 6 months later, Ethan and Delilah had established their mountain trading post. The business combined his wilderness knowledge with her commercial expertise, serving both town residents and traveling trappers. Their success proved that different skills could create powerful synergy. The trading post became a gathering place for people from various backgrounds. Mountain men, town merchants, traveling families, and local residents all found welcome there. The couple's acceptance of differences encouraged others to be more inclusive. Their personal relationship had deepened through shared challenges and successes. The blizzard that had forced their first real intimacy seemed like ancient history compared to the daily partnership they'd built. They worked together seamlessly, each contributing unique strengths. Grace Sullivan visited regularly, often bringing news from town.
Appearances.
"You two have become legends," Grace told them during one visit. "Young people talk about finding their own mountain man or smart woman." "Good," Delilah replied. "Everyone deserves genuine partnership." One autumn evening, they sat on their cabin porch, watching sunset paint the mountains golden. A young couple had stopped by earlier, seeking advice about overcoming family opposition to their engagement. Helping others had become a natural extension of their own journey. "Any regrets?" Ethan asked, echoing a question from their courtship days. "Only that it took a cruel bet to bring us together," Delilah replied. "But I suppose some good things come from unexpected places." Their story had become proof that authentic love could emerge from the most unlikely circumstances, that dignity could triumph over mockery, and that two people who saw each other clearly could build something lasting together.